welcome to today's Explainer. We're diving straight into a tale of two absolute extremes. We're talking about entirely different worlds that happen to share the exact same globe. On one hand, we've got totally untouched, mind-bending isolation, and on the other, ultra-dense, literally collapsing urbanization. It's a wildly fascinating look at how our human footprint, or the complete lack of it, totally defines the physical reality of the Earth we live on. Let's get right into it. So, I want to kick things off with a pretty simple but actually really profound question. Where exactly is the absolute loneliest place you could possibly stand on Earth? Now, I know when we think of isolation, we usually picture, a quiet forest or maybe a super remote desert highway. But scientifically speaking, geographic isolation goes way, way deeper than just a long drive. Earth's extremes. It really is a journey of striking contrast. Which brings us to our first major concept, points of inaccessibility, or the true poles of isolation. So what exactly is a point of inaccessibility? Well, it's definitely not just a tough hike. It's actually a specific geographic location, calculated by finding the exact coordinate mathematically furthest from any coastline. Imagine drawing a massive circle from this point. The edges would just barely graze the nearest shores. Basically, it means you've traveled as far away from land and usually human civilization as the actual geometry of the Earth will physically let you. It's the undisputed mathematical middle of nowhere. And there are actually a few of these scattered around the globe, each specific to its own landmass or ocean. But the absolute most mind-blowing ones, that'd be the Eurasian Pole, sitting deep in a remote desert near the Chinese border, and of course its watery counterpart, the oceanic pole of inaccessibility. You probably know it as Point Nemo. Let's look closer at the abyss of Point Nemo, the ultimate oceanic pole. Discovered back in 1992 using geospatial software, Point Nemo is pretty much defined by a single number, 0. We're talking 0 permanent human residence, 0 land anywhere nearby, and honestly, 0 chance of accidental human contact. If you're out there floating at Point Nemo, you are entirely, undeniably on your own. It is the reigning champion of isolation, thousands of miles from anything even resembling solid ground. To really put that into perspective, because the nearest landmass is over 1,600 miles away, the closest human beings to you aren't even on Earth. They are actually the astronauts orbiting above you on the International Space Station, because the ISS is only about 250 miles straight up. Think about that for a second. Outer space is literally closer to you than human civilization. How crazy is that? Okay, so let's make a really sharp pivot here. We are going from a vast ocean completely, totally void of humans straight to the exact opposite extreme, from nowhere to the multitude. We're leaving that silent isolation behind and heading into places packed so incredibly dense with millions of people that the earth beneath them is, quite literally, giving way. This brings us to sinking megacities and the massive geographic clash happening right now. You've probably seen the startling reports about massive, heavily populated areas like Mexico City and Jakarta. Human needs in these places are violently colliding with the local geography. To understand why, it's basically a three-step process. First, massive populations settle into one highly concentrated urban area. Second, just to survive, those millions of people aggressively extract groundwater from the aquifers deep beneath them. And third, well, think of the earth down there like a giant wet sponge. When you suck all the water out of that sponge, it just compresses. It flattens out entirely under the staggering, massive weight of the concrete and humanity sitting on top of it. But the truly alarming part is the sheer speed of this collapse. We aren't just talking about a few barely noticeable millimeters here. Parts of Jakarta, for example, are rapidly dropping by up to 25 centimeters. That's nearly 10 inches every single year. It is a visible structural crisis happening in real time, literally right under the feet of millions of citizens. So, what does this tell us? It reveals the true weight of humanity and the intense physical footprint we leave behind. This massive geographic shift really brings us to a pretty heavy realization about our modern footprint. We are physically altering the elevation of our own habitats simply by existing in such concentrated numbers. When we put these two extremes side by side, the contrast is completely stark. On one hand, you've got the untouched void of Point Nemo remaining perfectly intact precisely because of our absence. And on the other hand, you have the overexploited geography of urban centers buckling and collapsing under extreme water extraction.
It really is the perfect summary of Earth's modern extremes.
So, I'm going to leave you with this final, somewhat provocative thought. As our massive cities literally sink beneath us due to this overextraction, are we engineering a future where our own homes become just as unlivable and inaccessible as the deepest, most isolated parts of the ocean? It's definitely something to chew on. Thanks for exploring these wild extremes with me in this explainer. Until next time.